Story 1. The morning air was crisp, the kind that made every breath feel sharper, more awake. I stepped outside, still shaking off the last remnants of sleep, ready to start another uneventful day. But as I approached my car, something caught my eye, something that shouldn't have been there. A sign. It stood right in front of my usual parking spot, stark and new, as if it had appeared overnight. White letters against a black background. Official looking. Unremarkable, except for the words printed across it. Reserved for, Hammy. I froze. My heart thudded once, hard, against my ribs. This had to be a mistake. I hadn't requested a reserved spot. Hell, I didn't even know that was an option. For months, I had parked in this exact place without issue, an ordinary car in an ordinary lot. But now, my name was there, staring back at me, as though someone had decided that this space belonged to me, whether I wanted it or not. I glanced around. The lot was still, empty, the silence stretching just a little too long. No sign of a prankster lurking nearby, no knowing smirks from coworkers. Just that sign. Waiting. I reached out, fingers brushing over the smooth, cold surface. It felt normal, like any other sign, but the weight of its presence sent a shiver through me. This wasn't right. It felt deliberate. Personal. Like someone had been watching me. I got into my car, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. As I pulled away, I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone standing there, watching from the shadows. But there was nothing. Just the empty lot. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, the sign flashed behind my eyelids, taunting, accusatory. Reserved for, my name. By the next morning, the unease had settled into my bones, but I told myself I was overreacting. It had to be a clerical error. A mix-up. Nothing sinister. Until I arrived at work and saw it still standing there. Unmoved. Undisturbed. Waiting. I forced myself to go about my day, but I could feel its presence gnawing at the edge of my thoughts. When I finally worked up the courage, I went straight to the building manager's office, hoping for an explanation. But when I mentioned the sign, the manager only frowned. What sign? I hesitated. The one in my parking spot. It has my name on it. The confusion on their face was genuine. They shook their head. We don't assign individual spots. If you didn't request it, I don't know where it came from. A cold sensation curled in my gut. I called the parking lot service next, clutching the phone as the hold music buzzed in my ear. When I finally got through and explained the situation, the representative sounded just as perplexed. We don't place reserved signs without requests, they said. Are you sure someone didn't do it for you? A friend. A coworker. A family member. I swallowed. No one would have done that. Well, there's not much we can do unless you find out who requested it. I hung up, the line going dead in my hand. That evening, as I stepped into the lot, dread coiled in my stomach. The sign. It had moved. No longer in front of my usual spot, but shifted, a few spaces over. Another random, empty parking space. But the name, my name, was still there. Something cold crawled up my spine. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. Someone was playing a game with me. I scanned the lot, the dim glow of the streetlights casting long, distorted shadows. The world felt too quiet. Too empty. I turned, walking briskly to my apartment, my pulse hammering in my throat. Every few steps, I glanced over my shoulder, expecting something. Someone. But the lot remained still. That night, sleep was impossible. Sometime past midnight, headlights flashed across my bedroom window. A car pulling into the lot. I sat up, heart pounding, peering through the blinds. But by the time I looked, it was already gone. Just the darkness. Just the sign. Waiting. Story 2. The first thing I noticed was the low hum of my smartwatch vibrating against my wrist, a soft, insistent pulse pulling me out of sleep. My fingers fumbled for it in the darkness, my half-lidded eyes expecting to see the usual step count from the day before. But what I saw made my breath hitch. The number on the screen wasn't just off, it was impossible. 3,000 steps. A cold unease settled in my stomach. I had been asleep for hours, completely still under the covers. There was no way I had taken those steps. No way at all. I tapped the screen, thinking it was just some glitch. But as I scrolled through the activity log, my unease deepened. The steps weren't recorded in one burst but in a pattern, steady, deliberate, as if someone had been pacing through my home at regular intervals. Every few minutes. 4 hours. A chill ran down my spine. My smartwatch had always been precise, logging my movements with near-perfect accuracy. But this was something different. This wasn't mine. I sat up, heart pounding, and scanned the dimly lit bedroom. Everything was where it should be, my dresser, my desk, the closed door leading to the hallway. The room was silent. Still. But the data on my wrist told a different story. I hesitated before opening the full movement log. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the recorded path. That's when my breath caught in my throat. The steps didn't just circle my bedroom or lead to the bathroom. They wandered into places I didn't remember going. The movements were erratic, meandering into the kitchen, the living room, stopping in front of my bedroom door. And then, something even worse. At exactly 3 a.m., the footsteps stopped. Abruptly. No gradual slowing, no return to bed, just an unsettling, complete halt. A heavy dread weighed on my chest as I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Sleepwalking? No, the pattern was too deliberate. A malfunction? But the timestamps were too real. Unless someone else had been walking inside my house. My pulse roared in my ears. I threw back the covers and stumbled out of bed, checking the door locks, the windows, every possible point of entry. Everything was shut, bolted. Nothing out of place. There was no sign of a break-in. So who had been moving? As I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, a sharp, unexpected sound shattered the silence. Ding dong. The doorbell. I jolted so violently that my smartwatch buzzed again in response to my skyrocketing heart rate. My breath came in short, panicked gasps as I turned to face the front door. Someone was out there. I forced myself to move forward, feet heavy with dread. Each step felt like wading through thick fog. With shaking hands, I unlatched the lock and pulled the door open. No one. The street was empty. The porch, undisturbed. No package, no sign of movement, just the eerie hush of the night pressing in around me. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine. I stepped back inside, bolting the door behind me. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone been watching me? Had they been inside my house? The thought made my stomach churn. I needed answers. I sank onto the couch, my smartwatch still clutched in my grip. With a deep breath, I reopened the app and scrolled through the settings. That's when I saw it, something I hadn't turned on. Tracking active hours, enabled. My fingers hovered over the setting, my pulse hammering. I didn't remember activating it. And worse, it was set to track movements even while I slept. How? My hands felt clammy as I quickly toggled the setting off. But the sense of dread didn't fade. In fact, it only deepened. Because if the smartwatch had been tracking someone, and it wasn't me, then who had been moving inside my house last night? I barely made it through the rest of the day. The unease clung to me like a shadow, my thoughts circling back to those impossible steps, the unanswered questions gnawing at the edge of my sanity. By nightfall, I made a decision. I placed my smartwatch on its charger far from my bed. I wasn't taking any chances. If something happened again, I wouldn't be wearing it this time. Eventually, exhaustion won. My eyelids grew heavy, my mind drifting into uneasy slumber. But just as I was on the verge of sleep, a low vibration rattled through the room. Buzz. The sound jolted me awake. My smartwatch. It was still on the charging dock, untouched, but its screen was illuminated, flashing a new notification. My breath hitched as I reached for it, pulse thrumming in my ears. It wasn't a step count. It wasn't an app alert. It was a message. And it simply read, "I'm still watching you." I froze, my body locking up with pure, unfiltered terror. My fingers trembled over the screen as a suffocating silence filled the room. I wasn't alone. Even in sleep, even in darkness, something was watching. And it wasn't finished with me yet. Story 3. It was just after sunset when I first noticed it. The streetlights flickered to life, casting an eerie, amber glow along the cracked sidewalk. The air was thick with the quiet hum of a neighborhood settling into the night, occasional laughter from distant houses, the rustling of leaves in the cold evening breeze, the rhythmic chirping of unseen crickets. I was making my way home from the corner store, a bag of groceries nestled in my arms, when something peculiar caught my eye. At first, it was barely noticeable, a faint, almost imperceptible mark on the concrete, blending into the imperfections of the pavement. But as I stepped closer, my breath hitched. There, scrawled in bright white chalk, was a single arrow. Sharp. Deliberate. Pointing. Right at my house. I stopped cold. The weight of the grocery bag suddenly felt heavier, as though an unseen force had settled onto my shoulders. My eyes darted around the street, scanning for any sign of movement, for the shadow of someone lurking nearby. But there was nothing. No lingering figures, no shuffling footsteps. The street, normally alive with neighbors returning home, cars passing, dogs barking, felt eerily still. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine as I crouched down to inspect the arrow. The chalk was fresh. The powdery residue clung to the pavement, undisturbed by the wind. Whoever had drawn this had done so recently, maybe minutes ago. Maybe while I was still inside the store. Maybe while I was walking back, oblivious to the presence of someone watching me. A chill tightened around my ribs. This wasn't a careless doodle, a child's absent-minded game. It was precise. Too precise. The tip of the arrow was perfectly aligned with my front door, as though someone had marked a path, a direction, a warning. Or an invitation. I swallowed hard and forced myself to look up at my house. The porch light glowed faintly, a beacon of familiarity that should have been comforting, but instead made me feel exposed, like prey standing in a spotlight. I glanced around one last time before forcing my legs to move. Each step felt heavier than the last as I hurried toward my door. The hairs on my arms prickled with the inexplicable sensation of being watched, unseen eyes pressing into my back. My fingers fumbled with the key as I jammed it into the lock, twisted it too fast, nearly dropped it. The door swung open, and I stepped inside, slamming it shut behind me. I locked it. Then bolted it. Then checked it twice. But the feeling didn't go away. I set the groceries on the counter with trembling hands and walked to the window, hesitating before peeling back the curtain. The arrow remained there on the sidewalk, stark against the dim glow of the streetlights. My pulse pounded against my skull. It was just chalk, just a harmless marking. So why did it feel like something more? I told myself to ignore it, to brush it off. Maybe it was nothing. A prank. A coincidence. Maybe I was overthinking it. But the unease burrowed deep into my bones, impossible to shake. The hours dragged on. I tried to distract myself, made dinner, turned on the television, scrolled through my phone. But my mind kept drifting back to that arrow, the crispness of the lines, the way it pointed so perfectly. I imagined someone standing there, kneeling down, dragging the chalk across the pavement with careful precision, making sure the arrow faced my door. Watching. Waiting. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight. The idea of stepping outside sent a cold dread through me, but I had to see it again. Had to confirm it was real. That I wasn't imagining things. The lock clicked unnervingly loud as I turned it. The door creaked as I pulled it open, and the night air rushed in, sharp and cold. The street was silent, too silent. I hesitated, then stepped onto the porch, my breath hitching. I flicked the flashlight on, and the beam cut through the darkness, landing on the sidewalk. The arrow was still there. Sharp. Bright. Unmistakable. I took slow, hesitant steps toward it, my pulse drumming in my ears. I crouched again, running my fingers just above the chalk. Still fresh. The dust clung to my fingertips. Then. A rustling behind me. I froze. The flashlight trembled in my grip as I spun around, the beam lurching wildly across the yard. My breath caught in my throat. My skin tingled with the unmistakable sensation of being watched. But the street was empty. The houses loomed dark and silent, their windows like black, unseeing eyes. There was no movement, no sound except for the wind sifting through the trees. But something was there. I could feel it. Just out of sight. Just beyond the edges of the light. A suffocating fear wrapped around my chest. I turned on my heel and ran. I scrambled inside, slammed the door, locked it, every bolt, every latch, before pressing my back against the wood, trying to still my ragged breaths. Something was out there. Something that knew where I lived. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind outside made my heart slam against my ribs. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the moment I saw that arrow over and over again. By morning, I forced myself to check. I stepped onto the porch, my hands clammy, my stomach twisting. The sidewalk was clean. The arrow, gone. Not faded. Not smudged. Just, gone. As though it had never been there at all. I should have felt relieved. But instead, the dread only deepened. Because now I knew, without a doubt, that someone had been there. Someone had watched me. Someone had waited for me to see it. And then, just as easily as they had left their mark, they erased it. Like a message meant only for me. And somehow, I knew, this wasn't over. Story 4. I was nestled into the couch, the warmth of my coffee seeping through the ceramic mug, when I heard it, a faint rustling sound near the front door. At first, I dismissed it as the wind teasing the leaves outside, but something about it felt wrong. It was too deliberate. Too out of place. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I set my cup down with careful precision, listening. The house was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. My pulse quickened as I rose to my feet, my steps slow and cautious as I approached the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing. The porch stretched out in eerie stillness beneath the dim glow of the street lamp. Shadows dripped from the trees, stretching long and distorted across the pavement. No movement. No sign of anything amiss. I exhaled, shaking my head. Just my imagination. It had to be. But then, as I pulled the door open, something caught my eye. A small, folded note lay on the ground, just at the threshold. I hesitated. A cold shiver rippled through me as I bent down to pick it up. The paper was thin, almost fragile, and absent of any envelope. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it, revealing neat, precise handwriting. "You left this outside." My stomach dropped. I hadn't been outside in hours. My mind raced, trying to piece together some logical explanation. Was it a mistake? A prank? My eyes scanned the porch, then darted to the street, searching for someone, anyone, who might have left it. But there was nothing. No footprints. No discarded items. No indication of what I had supposedly left behind. I stepped back inside, shutting and locking the door behind me, an uneasy weight settling in my chest. Something felt wrong. I sat down, the note still gripped in my hand, but I couldn't focus on the television anymore. My thoughts churned. Who had left it? How had they known exactly where to put it? And, most unsettling of all, why did it feel like they had been watching me? I glanced toward the window, half expecting to see a figure lurking in the darkness. But the street was as empty as before. I needed answers. With a growing sense of unease, I pulled up my home security app and began scrubbing through the footage from the last hour. Everything seemed normal, cars passing by, a neighbor walking their dog, until I saw it. A shadow. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but when I rewound the footage and played it in slow motion, my breath caught in my throat. A dark figure, barely distinguishable in the grainy recording, moved across my porch. It was quick, almost too quick. They seemed to emerge from the edge of the frame, glide toward my door, and then, vanish. I rewound again, my heart hammering. The figure hadn't walked away. Hadn't turned back down the street. It had just disappeared. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. The timestamps aligned with the moment I had heard the rustling noise. Whoever, whatever, it was had been right outside while I was sitting on my couch, sipping my coffee, completely unaware. The fear settled deep into my bones. Whoever had left the note had gotten close. Too close. And I had never even heard them. I tried to shake off the growing dread, convincing myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. But no matter how many times I replayed the footage, I couldn't find one. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every shifting shadow outside the window sent a jolt of anxiety through me. The note sat on my nightstand, its presence an unsettling reminder that someone out there knew something I didn't. Days passed. I told myself it was nothing, a prank, a misunderstanding, a coincidence. Then, a week later, another note appeared. This time, it was slipped under my door. You were right to keep the note. My breath caught in my throat. Whoever was doing this wasn't just watching. They knew. Knew my thoughts. Knew my actions. And that realization filled me with a terror I couldn't escape. Something was coming. And I didn't know how to stop it. Story 5. It had been one of those quiet, uneventful evenings, the kind where the silence feels unnatural, almost too perfect. The kind where the house itself seems to be holding its breath, and every little noise becomes deafening. The rhythmic ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the floorboards shifting beneath me, they all blended into the stillness, creating a strange, uneasy harmony. I was home alone that night, having decided to stay in and catch up on some work. The house was empty, just me and the silence, which at first was almost comforting. I made myself a cup of tea, settled at the kitchen table, and let my fingers dance over the keyboard. My focus was sharp, my mind engaged, until it happened. At first, I barely noticed it. A sound, soft and distant. A voice. I might have ignored it altogether, brushing it off as my imagination, had it not been for the chilling familiarity of it. The voice sounded exactly like mine. I froze, my hands hovering above the keyboard. My first thought was that I had misheard, that maybe it was just the house settling or the wind slipping through unseen cracks. But the voice came again, clearer this time, unmistakably mine. You need to stop worrying, it said. Calm. Reassuring. Everything is fine. But I hadn't spoken. A cold shiver crawled up my spine as I turned my head toward the doorway leading into the living room. The voice was still there, faint but distinct, coming from somewhere just beyond my line of sight. My breath hitched in my throat. My pulse pounded in my ears. Slowly, cautiously, I rose from my chair, every movement feeling sluggish, as if I were wading through thick air. My legs felt unsteady as I took a step forward. The voice came again, steady and unhurried. "It's going to be okay." The words were soothing, but there was something wrong about them. Something I couldn't place. The voice was mine, yet it felt foreign, like an echo of something I had said before but couldn't remember. I hesitated at the threshold of the living room, my eyes scanning the empty space. The dim light from the kitchen barely illuminated the far side of the room, where the hallway led toward the bathroom. That's where it was coming from. That's where I needed to go. My body screamed at me to turn around, to grab my phone, to do anything but move forward. But something deeper, something instinctual, pushed me onward. The air felt heavier as I reached the bathroom door. The voice had not stopped. It was quieter now, as though retreating into the very walls. "You need to listen to yourself," it whispered. "Trust yourself." My breath came in short, shallow gasps. My fingers trembled as I reached for the light switch, flooding the small space with a harsh, yellow glow. The room was empty. Of course, it was empty. But the air still vibrated with something unseen, something wrong. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs, expecting to see, what? A shadow of myself? A reflection where there was no mirror? There was nothing. Just silence, thick and suffocating. I rushed back to the kitchen, grabbed my phone with shaking hands, and fumbled to call someone, anyone. I needed to hear another voice, a real voice. But when I opened my call log, my stomach dropped. It was empty. I hadn't called or texted anyone for hours. The messages I had sent earlier that day were still there, untouched. Normal. The voice was gone, but something had changed. I felt it deep inside me, an intangible wrongness lingering in the air. I sat in the living room for the rest of the night, unable to focus on anything except the feeling that I was not as alone as I thought. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound in the dark felt amplified, every whisper of wind a breath against my ear. The voice never returned, but its absence was worse. Because now, I was waiting for it. Days passed, then weeks. Life went on, the experience fading into the back of my mind like a bad dream. But I never forgot. Because sometimes, in the stillness of the night, when I'm alone in my home and everything feels just a little too quiet, I swear I hear it. A whisper, distant and familiar. My own voice, calling to me from another room. Story 6. I had just gotten home after an exhausting day at work, my body heavy with fatigue and my mind set on nothing but unwinding. But the moment I stepped through the front door, an odd sensation prickled at my skin. The air in the hallway was warm, uncomfortably so. Not unbearable, but distinctly different from the cool, controlled temperature I kept my home at. A malfunction, I thought. Maybe the thermostat had glitched. I pulled out my phone to check the settings. The main thermostat displayed a steady 72 degrees, just as it should. But then I noticed something strange. The guest room, a space that hadn't been touched in over a month, was reading at 78 degrees. That didn't make sense. No one had been in there. No windows were left open. No heating vents should have been on. Frowning, I made my way down the hall toward the guest room. As I reached for the doorknob, a wave of warmth seeped through the wood, radiating outward. I opened the door, and a rush of thick, stagnant air greeted me. It was suffocatingly warm, much hotter than the hallway, than the rest of the house. The bed was neatly made, the curtains drawn, blocking any sunlight. Everything appeared untouched, undisturbed. But the room itself, it felt wrong. I walked over to the thermostat on the wall. 78 degrees. Exactly as the main thermostat had shown. I checked the vents, hoping for an explanation. Nothing. No air was flowing from them. I stood there, the warmth pressing in, wrapping around me like unseen arms. A shiver ran down my spine. I backed out of the room, pulling the door shut behind me, and retreated to the living room. I told myself it was nothing. A glitch. A momentary issue. But as I sat on the couch, the feeling clung to me. That unsettling sense that something wasn't right. That I wasn't alone. By morning, the temperature in the guest room had returned to normal. I almost let it go. Almost convinced myself I had imagined it. But then, a week later, it happened again. This time, I had just come home from running errands when I felt it, that same thick, heavy warmth creeping into the hallway. Dread pooled in my stomach as I checked the thermostat. Again, the guest room was hotter than the rest of the house. I hesitated before stepping inside. The air was thick, the temperature cloying, as if the room was hoarding heat that shouldn't be there. I checked everything again. Windows, vents, thermostat. Nothing had changed. Nothing made sense. Determined to find a pattern, I began tracking the temperature over the following days. I checked at random times, monitoring the fluctuations. Sometimes it would spike inexplicably, even when the air conditioning was running. Other times, it would return to normal just as suddenly. There was no logic to it. And then, one night, I heard it. A soft clicking sound. I had been lying in bed, half asleep, when the noise started. Faint at first. Then louder. Tap. 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 It was rhythmic, deliberate. Coming from the guest room. My heart pounded as I threw off the covers and grabbed my phone, the cold light of the screen illuminating my trembling fingers. As I approached the guest room, the air shifted again, that same eerie warmth seeping through the cracks. But this time, the clicking was unmistakable. It wasn't random. It was calculated. Like someone, or something, was tapping from inside the walls. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The hallway light spilled into the room, casting long shadows over the bed, the dresser, the walls. Everything looked the same. Unchanged. But the clicking had stopped. And yet, the warmth remained. It pressed against my skin, made my breath feel too thick in my throat. I stood there, unmoving, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then, slowly, I backed away, stepping out of the room and leaving the door ajar. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called in a professional to check the heating system. I needed answers. Some kind of explanation. But when the technician arrived, he found nothing wrong. No issues with the vents, no faults in the thermostat. Everything was in perfect working order. I watched as he scratched his head in confusion. "House is fine," he said, trying to reassure me. But it wasn't. Over the following weeks, the guest room remained normal. No temperature spikes. No strange noises. But the unease never left me. I kept the door shut after that. I avoided the room as much as possible. Story 7. The night air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of the city as I stepped out of my apartment. I had no particular destination in mind, just a walk to clear my head. The streets were quiet, washed in the glow of flickering streetlights, and for a moment, I enjoyed the solitude. A buzz in my pocket pulled me from my thoughts. A message from a friend. "Don't forget about tonight." I typed out a quick reply, slid my phone back into my bag, and kept walking. Then, I heard it. The low, deliberate purr of an engine creeping up beside me. A yellow cab. It rolled to a slow stop at the curb, its headlights cutting through the dimly lit street. Through the rearview mirror, the driver's eyes locked onto mine, intense, unwavering, as if he had been waiting for me. I frowned. I hadn't called for a cab. For a brief second, I considered that he might be lost or looking for another passenger. But then, before I could say anything, the driver smiled, a knowing, almost familiar smile, and spoke. "Good evening, Jen." My heart stuttered. I stopped mid-step. I had never seen this man before. His voice was warm, friendly even, like an old acquaintance greeting me after a long time apart. But I didn't know him. And yet, he knew my name. A dozen explanations raced through my mind. Had I met him before? Had he overheard me talking? But I dismissed those thoughts almost as quickly as they formed. I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. I had been alone. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I forced my voice to remain steady. How do you know my name?" The driver chuckled, the sound oddly reassuring yet laced with something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Oh, I've been driving you for a while now. You must have forgotten. Hop in, it's cold out here." My skin prickled. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to turn around, to leave, to run. "No, I don't think so," I said, my voice weaker than I intended. "I haven't called a cab." The driver didn't react, at least, not in the way I expected. He didn't protest, didn't try to convince me. He simply waited. That eerie smile never wavered. "Come on, don't be shy. I'm here to take you where you need to go." The way he said it. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. I shook my head. "I'm fine, thanks." The street around me was empty. Too empty. I glanced over my shoulder, hoping to see another pedestrian, someone, anyone. But there was no one. I turned back, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The driver was still staring at me, his expression calm, patient. Then, softer this time, he murmured my name again. "Jen." I stiffened. "I'm not going to bite. You know you're supposed to get in. It's time." I shivered. It wasn't just the words. It was the certainty in his voice. Like he knew something I didn't. Like this was inevitable. My breath came quicker now, the weight of unseen pressure closing in around me. I didn't know him. I had never been in his cab before. And yet, there was something disturbingly familiar about the way he spoke to me. I was supposed to get in. No. I took another step back. The air felt heavier, thick with something unseen, something watching. "What do you want?" I asked, barely above a whisper. For the first time, his smile faltered. Just a flicker. Then it widened. "I'm just here to help. You'll understand soon enough." A pause. "But if you're not ready yet, that's okay." His voice was soothing now, almost gentle. "I'll be waiting." I turned and walked away. Fast. My heart thumped violently against my ribs, my hands clenched into fists. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. But I heard him. Just as I rounded the corner, his voice floated after me. "We always meet again, Jen." I ran. I didn't stop until I was inside my building, the door locked behind me, my back pressed against the cool wood. My breath came in ragged gasps. It was just a weird encounter. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't over. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A new email. No sender name. No details. Just a subject line. "I'll be waiting." I hesitated, then opened it. There was no body text. Just one sentence. "You'll come with me soon. It's only a matter of time." A cold, suffocating dread coiled around my chest. He had found me. And no matter how far I ran, he would always find me. Story 8. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain on the wind as I stepped out of my apartment. The streets were quieter than usual, the distant hum of the city softened by the late hour. I had no destination in mind, just a walk to clear my head, to shake the heaviness that had settled in my chest all day. As I wandered down the dimly lit sidewalk, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. I pulled it out, the glow of the screen casting eerie shadows on my hands. A reminder from a friend about a meeting later that night. I typed a quick response, slipping the phone back into my bag. I barely had time to let my thoughts drift before I heard it, an engine humming low, a slow, deliberate roll of tires against the pavement. A car was pulling up beside me. I turned my head slightly, expecting to see a lost driver asking for directions or maybe just another pedestrian catching a late-night ride. Instead, a yellow cab coasted to a stop, its headlights casting long, skeletal beams onto the asphalt. The driver's eyes caught mine in the rearview mirror, watchful, waiting. I felt a prickle at the base of my neck. I didn't call for a cab. I shifted on my feet, trying to dismiss the unease curling in my stomach. Maybe he had mistaken me for someone else. Maybe he was just waiting for another passenger. But before I could take another step, the driver spoke. "Good evening, Jen." His voice was smooth, practiced. Too familiar. A cold wave of shock crashed over me. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I had never seen this man before in my life. My pulse stuttered. My name. He knew my name. A rational explanation struggled to form in my head. Had I met him before? Had I spoken loudly on the phone earlier without realizing it? But no, I had been alone all day. No conversations. No introductions. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I think you have the wrong person," I said, taking a step back. The driver's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Oh, I've been driving you for a while now," he said. "You must have forgotten. Hop in, it's cold out." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I shook my head. "No, I haven't called a cab." The driver didn't argue. He didn't insist. He simply watched me, that eerie smile never fading, his eyes reflecting something off. Something I couldn't name but felt deep in my bones. I looked around, hoping, praying, that someone else was nearby. That I wasn't alone on this street with him. But the world felt impossibly empty. No witnesses. No escape. "Come on," he coaxed, his voice syrupy, like a patient teacher guiding a forgetful student. "Don't be shy. I'm here to take you where you need to go." A sharp spike of fear lanced through me. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. His words were too deliberate, too confident, like he knew something I didn't. Like he was speaking about more than just a ride. I stepped back again, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. "I'm fine. Thanks." He didn't react. He just sat there, watching, waiting. Then, after a long silence, he said my name again. "Jen." A whisper this time. A promise. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until I forced myself to speak. "How do you know my name?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. The driver tilted his head slightly, amused. "Oh," he said softly, "you don't need to worry about that." I turned on my heel, my legs suddenly moving faster than I thought possible. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I just walked, no, ran, away, my breath sharp and uneven. But just as I put distance between myself and the cab, I heard him again. "You'll get in eventually," he called after me. His voice was calm. Absolute. "We always meet again." I reached my apartment in a haze of fear, slamming the door behind me, locking it twice. My hands trembled as I pressed my back against the cool wood. My thoughts raced. Who was he? How did he know my name? Why did he act like he knew me? I shook my head, trying to brush it off. Just a weird encounter. Just a mistake. But the fear clung to me. Hours later, I distracted myself with my phone, scrolling mindlessly through notifications until something made my stomach drop. An email. No sender. No reply option. Just a subject line, "I'll be waiting." I clicked it open, my breath catching. There was no message. No explanation. Just one single line of text staring back at me. "You'll come with me soon. It's only a matter of time." I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. Somewhere, deep down, I knew. This wasn't over. Story 9. The night was still, the air thick with silence, save for the soft hum of my phone as I scrolled mindlessly through social media. The dim glow of the screen cast eerie shadows across the walls of my dimly lit living room. I had been alone for hours, wrapped in a cocoon of false security, when the sharp ping of a notification shattered the quiet. A message. At first, I almost ignored it. An unknown number, it wasn't unusual. Spam, maybe. A wrong number. But something made me check, and the moment I opened it, a chill slithered down my spine. A photo. My fingers trembled as I tapped on the attachment, and when the image filled my screen, my breath hitched in my throat. It was a picture of my house, more specifically, my living room window. I recognized the view instantly, the large oak tree in the yard, the old street lamp flickering weakly across the road. But there was something terribly wrong. The angle. It wasn't a shot I had ever taken. Someone had been here. Someone had taken this photo. My stomach knotted, dread twisting inside me. My mind scrambled for logical explanations, but none made sense. The message was simple, just 2 words. "I'm here." I sucked in a sharp breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. My gaze snapped to the window. I half expected to see a face staring back at me, some shadowy figure lurking just beyond the glass. But the street was empty. The darkness beyond the tree seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing everything in its void. Still, I felt it, an undeniable presence, something just beyond my sight. Watching. Waiting. I tried to shake the feeling, to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Someone messing with me. But deep down, I knew better. My hands trembled as I scrolled back to the image, staring at it, trying to dissect every pixel. How close had they been? Were they standing in my yard? Or? A new, horrifying thought struck me like a punch to the gut. Had they been inside? I forced myself to breathe, to move. I checked every door, every window, making sure they were locked. They were. But that didn't ease my fear, it only made it worse. Whoever had sent that message had been close. Too close. The hours dragged on, the weight of paranoia settling into my bones. I kept the lights off, hoping that, if I couldn't see them, maybe they couldn't see me. Every sound, the settling of the house, the whisper of the wind, became something sinister. Sleep never came. I stayed on edge, phone clutched in my hand, waiting for another message that never arrived. At least, not until the next afternoon. This time, there was no photo. Just a message. Home. Closer. The world around me tilted, a wave of nausea and dread crashing over me. Closer. How could they be closer? My skin crawled with the unbearable sensation of being watched. My head snapped toward the windows, scanning, searching. Nothing. No movement, no sign of life. But that didn't mean they weren't there. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? A strange message? A photo of my own window? There was no real crime, nothing they could act on. But that gnawing feeling in my gut told me that this was far from harmless. By evening, my fear had transformed into a restless desperation. I left the house, hoping that distance would clear my mind, that I could shake the feeling of invisible eyes trailing my every move. I walked aimlessly through a nearby park, my thoughts a chaotic storm of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, my hands clammy, my breath shallow. No photo. No long message. Just one chilling word. Now. I shot up from the bench, my pulse thundering in my ears. My eyes darted around, scanning the faces of strangers, searching for something, someone, that didn't belong. Was I being followed? Had they found me? Panic gripped me as I rushed back to my car, locking the doors the moment I slid inside. I sped home, my gaze flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. The streets blurred past in a haze, but the overwhelming sense of being watched never faded. When I got home, I checked the locks. Again. I peered out the windows, into the darkness beyond my porch. Nothing. And yet, the fear remained. Then, the knock came. Soft. Deliberate. My heart stopped. No one ever came to my door unannounced. I crept forward, each step weighted with dread. My fingers curled around the edge of the curtain as I peered through the peephole. No one. A long, suffocating silence stretched before I noticed it, a small, folded piece of paper on the doorstep. My breath hitched as I reached out, my hand shaking violently as I picked it up. Slowly, I unfolded it. 3 words. I'm watching. A suffocating realization crashed over me, heavier than anything I had ever felt. They had been here. Close enough to touch my door. Close enough to leave this message. Close enough to step inside. And I still had no idea how to stop them. Story 10. OJ awoke that morning with an unshakable sense of unease, as if the night itself had woven something sinister into the fabric of reality. The weight of exhaustion clung to his bones, a restless night spent battling vivid, unsettling dreams that felt too real, too intrusive. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the remnants of those visions lingering like whispers in the dark. As he stretched, his hand absently brushed against his jacket draped over the chair. He hadn't worn it in days, but a foreign weight in the pocket sent a slow, creeping dread through him. His fingers curled around the unfamiliar object, and as he pulled it free, his breath hitched. A business card. It was impossibly clean, a stark white against his trembling fingers, with bold black text printed neatly in the center. Call me when you're ready. No name. No number. No company. Just those 5 words, stark and cold. A mistake, perhaps. Left behind by someone else. A prank? But as he stared at the card, the edges sharp against his skin, an unease curled around his thoughts, tightening its grip. He couldn't recall anyone handing him something like this. He couldn't remember ever seeing a card like it before. The apartment was eerily silent, as if holding its breath. His mind raced for an explanation. Had he met someone recently who would leave something like this? Had a conversation slipped through the cracks of his memory? He reached for his phone, hoping for some clarity, an unread message, a missed call, anything, but there was nothing. Nothing but that card. The day dragged on, each hour stretched thin by the weight of the unknown. He tried to ignore it, to push the card from his thoughts, but it lingered like a specter in the back of his mind. And then, just as night draped the world in its quiet darkness, his doorbell rang. A chill crawled up his spine. He wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, cautiously, he approached the door. The hallway light flickered, a small, faltering thing, as though hesitating to reveal what lay beyond. His fingers trembled as he reached for the handle, and when he pulled the door open, a stranger stood before him. Tall. Dark hair. expression unreadable. He held a small package in his hands. "I have something for you," the man said. His voice was calm, measured, as if this moment had already played out in his mind 1,000 times. OH's breath caught in his throat. The stranger, he didn't recognize him, and yet there was something unsettlingly familiar about his presence, like a forgotten dream clawing its way back to the surface. Wordlessly, he accepted the package, the weight of it pressing against his palms like an unspoken demand. The moment it was in his grasp, the man turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the quiet hum of the street. No explanation. No hesitation. Just departure. OJ stood frozen in the doorway, the night pressing in around him. When he finally stepped back inside, he placed the package on the table, its presence an unspoken threat against the stillness of his home. His fingers trembled as he peeled back the tape, the sound deafening in the quiet. Inside, another card. Identical to the first. But this time, the message had changed. "You know what to do now." The words were heavier than before, a silent force pressing down on his chest. A command. A challenge. A realization. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew him. Knew what he would do before he even did it. His mind clawed for answers, but all he could feel was the suffocating grip of fear curling around his thoughts. He was no longer a bystander in whatever this was, he was part of it now. An unwilling participant in a game he didn't understand. But he had to know. His hand hovered over the phone, the card still clutched in his fingers. His pulse thundered in his ears as he dialed, every ring echoing in the vast emptiness of the room. Once. Twice. Then, a click. A breath. And a voice, calm and expectant. "Are you ready?" OH's throat went dry. He swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, the voice responded, smooth as silk, sharp as a blade. "That's not important. What matters is that you're ready now. You know what you have to do." A cold dread curled around his spine. I don't understand." "Oh, but you do," the voice murmured. "You've already made your choice. Whether you realize it or not. Just follow the path, and everything will make sense." And then, silence. The call ended. OJ sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, the empty static of the room wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. His heart pounded, his hands shaking. He had no idea what he had just agreed to. No idea what path he had unknowingly stepped onto. But he knew one thing. There was no going back. The following days blurred into a fevered dream of paranoia. Shadows stretched too long in the corners of his vision. Footsteps echoed where none should be. The phone calls continued, each time with the same haunting whisper. "You know what to do now." But he didn't. Or maybe he did. Maybe he had always known.